Welcome back to the Arab American News Tuesday broadcast. We are recording actually, and our guest now is Dr. Hayg Oshagan. Dr. Oshagan is the professor of communication at Wayne State University. Also, he is the director of New Michigan Media, a consortium of ethnic and minority newspapers, including the Arab American News and the Michigan Chronicle, the Latino Press, and the Korean Weekly, and also the Jewish News, among 120 other outlets across the state of Michigan. Welcome to our broadcast, Dr. Oshagan.
Thank you.
I know that you are you have your fingers everywhere as far as the minority and ethnic media, in addition to your role as a professor of communication at Wayne State University. But you are playing a major role in this year's or this decade of census. So let's talk about the census, because I just wanted to, for the next 15 minutes, talk about what is the census, why is the census important, and also what are we doing in order to raise awareness for the census, and what is the process right now, where are we in this process, and when did this process mature? I think it matures sometimes in May or maybe the beginning of June.
Before then.
Before that?
Finishes, you mean?
Yeah.
Finishes, you mean?
So let's start by saying, what is the census? Because, as you know, we have produced a video here at the Arab American News, and we've went out and asked people, do you know anything about the census? And we really did not get anyone.
I saw the video.
You saw the video, and people did not know what the census.
أنا ما أعرف عنه شيء. أنا خبرة سنسر يعني هو بيستخدم سنسرز، هو خبرة سنسرز بيستخدم تكنولوجيا أو شيء زي كذا.
فيمكن آخر إحصاء كان قبل لا أجي هون، فما عندي فكرة يعني كثيرة عن الإحصاء.
أنا لي هون حوالي 4 سنين في هنا مشكين دربون. والله ما بعرف شيء عن هذا.
Some of the people have been here like for 3 years, some of them have been 5 years, some of them have been here for 15 years, but they still do not know what is the census and what does the census serve for the state of Michigan or the people of the United States. So, first of all, let us know first, give us an idea, what is the census?
So, Sama, to begin with, the census has been conducted in America since 1790, every 10 years. It's the only country that's done it every 10 years for that long. European countries during the wars stopped doing their censuses, but we've been doing it all the time. So every year, the money that the federal government collects from us in taxes comes back to the states to help with all kinds of social programs that the states need. How much each state gets depends on how many people live in that state. Mm-hmm. And how many people live in a state is based on the census count. So once the census is done in 2020, this year, that number of how many people live in Michigan is going to be the same number that's used for the next 10 years, and that's the same number that's going to be the basis for any money that comes to us from the federal government.
How much do we get right now from the federal government based on the last census, which happened in 2010?
Based on 2010, Michigan gets about $30 billion, with a B, $billion every year from the census, from the federal government. Mm-hmm. If the count is low, we get less money. If the count is higher, we get more money. And that money serves everything that you can think of in the community.
Before we get to the money, I just wanted to say $30 billion every year for the last 10 years that
That's
we've been
right.
receiving. Mm-hmm. Okay. For how many people were counted in Michigan? Do you have
Michigan's population is about I think 9 million people.
So they were counted as 9 million, or they were undercounted?
Well, the undercount in Michigan probably happened most in Detroit. Mm-hmm. Detroit in 2010, I remember in 2010 when the census came out, we thought Detroit's population was 800,000. It came down at 713,000 people. Mm-hmm. When you have 713,000, you're going to lose all kinds of money. If you have 800,000, that's one level of money. 750,000 is another level of money. Below that, you have lost billions of dollars over 10 years. For Detroit, every person not counted costs the city, in federal money this way, $5,500 per person per year for 10 years. So here is the number that's really astonished me when Detroit told me this. If 20,000 people are missed in Detroit, that's only 3% of the people living in the city. If 20,000 people are missed, that's $1 billion for the city that the city doesn't get
For 10 years.
for over 10 years. Does Detroit need $1 billion? Of course it needs $1 billion.
Well, they declared bankruptcy for 18 billion.
Yeah. Now, if 10,000 people are missed, which is very likely that we will miss at least 10,000 people in Detroit, that's $3 billion, more than $3 billion that the city will not get. This is money that a city like Detroit can't afford to not have. I mean, for schools, for hospitals, for everything. We didn't talk about where the money goes, but this is a lot of money, and it's almost Mayor Bing sued the federal government in 2010. Said this is not right. We're more than 713,000. You missed thousands of people, but it didn't go anywhere. But a lot of money is at stake.
Let's just go back for a second and say, you said that we get $30 billion. Michigan government gets $30 billion in funds every year based on the census count of 2010.
Yeah.
What do they do with this money?
So the money comes in to the state, and the state divides that money to the counties and to the cities based on each one's population. So a county with more people is going to get more money. A city with more population is going to get more money too. And then the state uses the money as well based on the state numbers. And this is the money that's spent. That's how it's spread out between. And the count of how many people live in Detroit is going to determine how much money Detroit gets. How many people live in Wayne County?
Dearborn?
Dearborn the same way.
Same way.
That's exactly.
So what is this money used for, basically? I mean, we have 4 categories, I think, that are important in the census, that touches people's life in a way that directly affect them. One is the healthcare. So how does it affect them in healthcare?
So in terms of healthcare, it's Medicare, Medicaid. That's a few $1 billion every year, with like $15 billion a year is for Medicare and Medicaid across the state. I mean, not this year. Supplemental health insurance for children, health insurance for women, all the emergency care services. All of those.
So my child and all these.
All of those things are yes, that's right. Food and health. I mean, like meals on wheels, school breakfast programs, school lunches. All of that is tied to the census. We can add to it low-income housing loans, money for schools, K through 12, elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools, road construction. Head Start, adoption services, foster care services. Almost everything that people need money and help for, part of it comes from the census. This is the story, this is the way I like to put it. Detroit every year gives out about 75,000 school lunches every year. If the money is low, they won't have as many school lunches to give out. The kids haven't gone away. The kids are still there. They didn't get counted, but they don't go away. But the money
and they're going to eat.
They need to eat, but the food, the money for the school lunches has gone away. Yeah. So it's a serious issue, and so much is touched. So many people are touched by it.
So okay, that brings us to the other portion of the importance of the census, which is political presence or political representation.
Yeah.
I know that in Michigan have lost at least 2 members in Congress because of the census, because the count is going down.
2010 we lost 1, and then before we lost 1.
In 2001 we lost 1.
Yeah, and 10.
So now we are at 14, right?
Yeah.
So we might be losing 1 if the count is not done right, or if we are not counted properly.
Yeah, the number of seats in Congress doesn't change. It's 435. So if the seats
the seats are 435, and then they're divided over the census count.
That's right. The states that have more people get more seats.
That's right.
And so if a state has more population, they're going to get more seats. But if the number doesn't change, some states have to give up seats for those who are getting more people. So the Michigan lost a seat in 2010. We're down to 14 from 15. And by all estimates, we'll probably lose 1 more seat. And if the count is really bad, we might lose 2 seats, actually.
Right.
A state like Texas gained 4 seats in 2010. And they're going to gain more seats this census too, because more people are living there. It's our voice in Washington, D.C. I mean, that's what that is. And
also in the state too.
Yes, and the state legislature the same way. I mean, how many people we have in Lansing, state reps and state senators, also depends on the census count, because that's where the district lines are.
For example, if Dearborn is undercounted, they may add other districts to Dearborn in order to make up the
Yeah,
difference.
I think
And therefore, Dearborn would lose a representation in Lansing because they were undercounted.
I mean, if we lose one more congressional seat, for example, let's come back to Lansing. But if we lose a congressional seat, have you thought which one we would lose? The one that we will probably lose is Rashida Tlaib's seat.
Yeah.
They will probably combine Dingle's and Tlaib's seats so that there's one, because population is too low. You can't have two seats. You have to
Right.
take one away. And so we would lose one of our strongest advocates in Washington, D.C.
Right.
if districts are combined because of low population. And the same in Lansing. We
Right.
would lose the voice of Dearborn, the voice of Wayne County.
Because already Dearborn, part of Dearborn, small part of Dearborn is added to Detroit.
Mhm.
So if the count is less in Dearborn than in 2010,
Mhm.
then they're going to take more chunk of Dearborn
That's right. Yeah.
to add it to Detroit. So you lose more representation as. What's the other issues that the census determines? Like the number of people determines, other than like
These are
money
the-
and political representation.
These are the two main ones. I mean, and the census determines where hospitals are built, where roads are placed, where airports are placed, and all this stuff. But these two things, the money that our communities get for all the services that they need, and then our voice in Washington and our voice in Lansing. Imagine how much less power we would have as a community if we had less people in Lansing.
We don't have much time. You are heavily involved in the census with the New Michigan Media and with Michigan Nonprofit Association and with other entities too, in order to make sure that everybody is counted. Can you just tell us briefly what you're doing and what kind of plan do you have already implemented and you have going to implement in the next few months in order to make sure that everybody is counted?
The people who generally, there are categories of people who generally don't count in this, don't do the census. One of the biggest groups is minorities. And so the Michigan Nonprofit Association came to New Michigan Media and said, look, you have contacts with all of these newspapers, radio stations, and websites that are minority and ethnic across the state of Michigan. Can you help us reach them so that they do the census? And so we put together a list of over 110 minority media from here to Marquette, all the way across Michigan, and got in touch with all these radio stations, all these newspapers, all these websites, and some TV stations too. And the effort is to come up with the right message in original languages, whether it's Arabic or Bengali or Spanish or Native Americans, and have the right message delivered by the right people through their own local ethnic media. This is the way to convince people to do it, because it doesn't matter if the governor or the president says do it. It has to come from someone they trust and they know. And ethnic media is a trusted voice in all
So you
these
started
communities.
this program beginning the middle of January.
Right.
So it's going to go all the way.
Into the
Until-
end of May.
End of May.
The census gets into mailboxes March 12. It will go on until end of May. As by the end of April, if you haven't responded, people will come knocking on your door, and then it'll go another month, a month and a half after that. But our effort is to get people to do it. So the January through May timeline is what we're working on.
So you may get it also in the email. Right?
Yeah. So on March 12, those people who have fast enough internet are going to get a card with the code on it to log on and fill the census online.
Mhm.
Where internet is slow, they're going to get the paper version right away, so that they fill it out like the old days. So
Okay.
they fill it out and send it back.
Let's talk about the paper version and the electronic version. It's 9 questions.
Mhm.
It takes about 10
10 minutes.
minutes. What are the questions?
It's really very simple. People, I don't know, sometimes imagine it's like doing your taxes or something.
Right.
It just asks you your name. It asks you how many people live in this house. It asks what your relationship is to the people living in the house. It asks if you own the house or rent the house. It asks what your race is and what your ethnicity is. And that's it. It just takes really 10 minutes.
Okay, people are scared. Some people are scared of government. They do not want to give information like this. What do you say to these people who are scared of government? Do not trust government. They're going to take my information and then turn it into the ICE or to the CBP or to the FBI or to a governmental agency, and they're going to come after me. Maybe they're going to take away my food stamps and my social security. What do you say to these people?
That's really other than not knowing what the census is about. This is the biggest fear that people have, that the issue will be shared with all these agencies. But I can say that unequivocally, 100% is confidential. It is confidential for 72 years. The census is not given to anybody for 72 years. There are laws against it, and this law has never been broken in America. Over 50 years now, the census information has never been shared with any
72
agency.
years from 2020,
Yeah,
they will be released.
That's right.
By that time, who knows?
we'll be around.
Yeah. Well, is there anything else that we need to know about the census that we haven't covered? I know it's a short time, but I want everybody to
Well,
listen.
the one last thing to say is that everyone should be counted. Everyone who lives under a roof should be counted. If you're a citizen or not a citizen, makes no difference. If you are a student here with an F1 visa, doesn't matter. You should count. If you are an H1 visa,
Even if
should
you are
count.
illegal.
Even if you have no visa, it's expired. You should.
Yeah.
That's how you should count.
Yeah.
And if you sublet a room in your house to someone, you should count them in the census too. Everyone under the roof who lives in America counts. The only people who don't count is someone here as a tourist that's going to go back. If they are here, they count.
Well, good. Thank you very much for this information. This is not the last time
I hope
that
so.
we're going to be talking about the subject. We're going to be having you again in here, and we're going to continue the discussion of how important the census is. Of course, you will be hearing us from us again. We ask you, when you get the census, in your mailbox, and when you get this card, to go out and electronically fill it, the census online. Please do it. It's very important for our kids, for our future, for our political presence in Washington, D.C. and in Lansing. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Hey, Michigan. The census is only 9 questions and takes about 10 minutes. And money for your kids' school lunches and food assistance relies pretty heavily on your participation. It's easy. So fill out the census this spring and count everyone in your home. When everyone counts, everyone wins. To learn more, please visit myvoicecounts.org. That's mivoicecounts.org.